Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor and New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe. Hoping you all had a wonderful week. There is a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, here's the truth about Black lives in America. Now, certainly in 2020, every major institution in the United States, including social media platforms, sports leagues, such as the NBA and the NFL, universities, Hollywood, and even major corporations pledge their allegiance to the Black Lives Matter movement. And protesters span the entire country, mostly, over the outrage of the killing of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department. Now, it's understandable that the nation was so united in shock and in horror after George Floyd's death. And of course, his tragic case called attention to the need for some sensible police reforms. But if we truly believe that Black Lives Matter, then we can't just we cannot and must not focus on only a small percentage of those lives taken, which is actually less than 0.5% during conflicts with the police. I mean, we certainly should not be adopting policies that will lead to even more deaths in the Black community. Just as an example, folks, last year alone saw the largest year-to-year increase in homicides ever recorded in American history. The homicide rate in 34 cities was 30% higher in 2020 compared to the previous year, according to a recent report in January by the National Commission on COVID-19 and Criminal Justice. Now, victims of these homicides are disproportionately African American. At least 8,600 Black lives were lost due to homicides in 2020, an increase of more than 1,000 compared to 2019, which was at 7,484. Now, violent crime obviously is concentrated in primarily low-income, marginalized Black communities, where the police are under-resourced and oftentimes Democratic leadership has failed abysmally. Okay? Another example, in Chicago, certainly in the Windy City, 80% of gun violence victims in 2020 were Black. According to the latest data in New York City, 71% of shooting victims are also Black, even though Black people constitute only just 26% of the city's population. The tragic reality is that one Black life was killed less than every hour in the United States in 2020. Now, meanwhile, of course, politicians and the mainstream liberal media sensationalize and magnify any questionable case involving a Black suspect and, of course, a white police officer to affirm the dogma of, quote, racial oppression, even if the suspect was at fault. Now, they obsessively sort of lament racial disparities in every aspect of American life, but the most egregious disparity, especially when it comes to homicide victimization rates, is rarely ever mentioned. And why? Well, since more than 90% of Black homicide victims are actually killed, guess what? By fellow Blacks. All right? Now, the ghost of sort of endemic white supremacy that, seems to be, not invoked enough to sort of push the racial grievances narrative is full blown. Actually, folks, it's really on steroids today, if we're being honest about it. And as a result, the media turns a blind eye because Black lives only matter when racism is involved. Now, of course, yet, the probability of, of an African American being killed by a civilian is more than 30 times higher than that of being killed by a member of law enforcement. Again, in Chicago's marginalized neighborhood last year alone, more than 3 times as many Black children died of homicides than the total number of unarmed Black Americans killed by the police in 2020. Now, look, folks, let's be honest, okay? Of course, police officers are agents of the state, and we have to hold them to a higher standard than the average citizen. But a life taken is a life taken, all right? So the victims' families grieve whether the assailant is a gang member or an officer in blue. And yet our society, though, is systemically failing citizens like the people I just discussed in Chicago, partly because the Black Lives Matter movement has pushed to sort of defund the police and reduce the presence across the nation. Folks, let me be very clear. Police reform is necessary. I know plenty of outstanding police officers right here in Hudson County, in the city I live in, Union City, right next door in West New York where I grew up, down the road in Hoboken and Weehawken, even down the road in Jersey City, all the way down south in Hudson County to Bayonne. I know plenty of great men and women in blue who have a very difficult job, sometimes not working in the best of neighborhoods, but you know what? They do it with dignity and they do it with decorum and also with professionalism. Are there bad cops? Absolutely, folks. There are bad apples in every profession. Okay, there are bad doctors, there are bad attorneys, there are bad journalists. Okay, I'm not one of them, obviously, but there are bad apples in every profession. But you would think, based on the liberal media, that it's not just a few bad apples when it comes to law enforcement, but it's orchards. Folks, it's not. And this is where we have to sort of get back to sort of reality. And folks, I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to hold your hand. That's what your loved one or your boyfriend, girlfriend, your husband, wife, whoever, partner, that's what they tend to do. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to tell you the truth, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you feel and how awkward it is. But folks, we have to talk about this. There's no question that police reform is necessary. And we see all last summer that the Black Lives Matter movement, bitched and moaned on every possible platform they could. And listen, they had some enablers, right? They had the liberal media behind them. They had Hollywood. They had sports leagues. They had academics, you name it. Black Lives Matter, the movement, always found a way to sort of persevere and be out in the forefront. But I've talked about this before. Now, we can still care about Black lives and Black communities without sort of acquiescing to oftentimes the radical platforms that are presented by the Black Lives Matter movement. Folks, the entire aspect or the entire notion about defunding the police, especially in marginalized neighborhoods in the United States, the last thing we need to do is under-resource police departments, because it's these practices that ultimately doom Black communities, okay? I get it. Listen, just go down the road to Jersey City. There are great spots to eat and live in downtown Jersey City, even the Jersey City Heights. But when you go down to the south side, maybe somewhere near 440 or really off of like Martin Luther King Boulevard or Bergen Avenue, folks, it almost feels like a war zone. I'm not saying that to be, malicious or defamatory. It's the truth. And for example, the Jersey City Police Department have a really tough job to do when they have to walk into some of these neighborhoods and blocks and deal with, let's be honest, really rambunctious and outright, oftentimes belligerent residents. Okay? And no one's justifying the killing of Black people. No one's justifying the killing of brown people or white or poor white people. No one's saying that. Okay? But it just seems like, we can't talk about really what's at the heart of what's killing Black lives in the United States. And folks, again, I'm not saying this to be inflammatory, but facts are facts. And I get it. Yes, there are incidents of police brutality that we have to address. But folks, whether it's Chicago, Oakland, Cleveland, Philadelphia, parts of New York City, all right? The fact that Black lives are being taken, yeah, I get it. I understand that there's outrage about police officers engaging in misconduct. But folks, at the heart of the matter, the people killing Black people are fellow Black people. But people don't want to talk about that. Or it's taboo, or it's racist, or it's bigoted. It's not bigoted, folks. It's the truth. And the sooner we get to wrap our heads around that, I think the better of a conversation we're going to have about addressing what's going on in these neighborhoods and how to address violence. Again, folks, police reform is necessary. There's no question about it. But the men and women in blue as a totality, if we're looking at a macro level, really isn't the problem. At the micro level, it's how Black communities treat each other and how they're killing each other in large numbers every single year. You don't believe me? Look it up. The FBI produces the uniform crime reports every year. You don't want to trust my source? Fine, look it up yourself. And trust me, when you do, you'll see what I see. And it's the facts, and they're really unavoidable. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On this week's edition of the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to every week live at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was Union City Mayor and State Senator in the 33rd Legislative District, Brian Stack. We talked for over an hour on a variety of different issues, both at a local and a state level. Here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about the mayor's challenges that he's faced in this past year with COVID-19 in such a large city like Union City, where it's so densely populated and so many residents obviously fled to his office for relief or for some answers about what's going on during this pandemic. Let's hear what the mayor had to say about it.
Let's get right to it here. COVID has been a challenge for every municipality since last March. I can't believe it's coming on a year already that we've been dealing with COVID-19. And I know especially in a city as densely populated as Union City, you have been leading the pack in services and just being there for constituents. What are some of the biggest challenges, even almost a year later, that the city is still facing, Mr. Mayor?
I think, Fernando, the biggest challenge is now, just seeing the amount of people that we've lost. Union City lost 278 people as of today. The number of infections has been high. It's because of our density in Union City. And now the biggest challenge, I think, is getting the vaccines out. We've been working really hard. My office, the Board of Education, just working everyone together to try to get the vaccine out. As fast as we're getting them out. We're hoping that number increases. We're working closely with Governor Murphy to see, as it comes down from the federal government, that we could really get these vaccines going, not only in Union City, but in Hudson County and throughout the state. to get everybody as vaccinated as quickly as possible, especially our elderly population, our first responders, to make sure that this is done and to make sure everyone's safe again and to return to some sense of normalcy. I mean, my heart goes out to all those families that have lost a loved one. They're part of the bigger Union City family, and it's tough when 278 people passed away, and I personally probably have known over 260 of them. It's really been tough on all of us, tough as a community and tough on everyone, especially the families who lost a family member or just a level of sickness that we've experienced is something that we've never seen in our lifetime.
Secondly, we discussed sort of the impact that tenant and landlord disputes are having, not just in Union City, but throughout Hudson County and also throughout the state of New Jersey. We know Governor Murphy, via executive order, has frozen evictions and obviously rent payments and also mortgage payments during the pandemic. Nevertheless, though, in such a densely populated area like Union City, Mayor Brian Stack faces the challenges of having to deal with tenants and also landlords during this very difficult time. Let's see what he had to say about it.
Now, Mr. Mayor, when we think about, again, the impact of COVID, we talk about city services and we talk about how many residents, whether they are struggling for employment or for basic necessities such as food, we know that, again, it's almost a year now that we've been dealing with this pandemic here in New Jersey, especially in Hudson County and Union City. But, Mr. Mayor, even a year later, a lot of landlords are concerned about what's going on with tenant laws. The governor, was very specific about executive orders about make sure we put a freeze on evictions, whether it be on rent hikes or anything else. Has your office been inundated with requests or just, feedback from the community saying, hey, I'm having trouble with this landlord or I'm having trouble paying my rent? How do you balance all of this that's sort of being thrown at you?
It's been tough, Fernando, and that's a really good point and a really good question. Yeah, definitely. I've had thousands of tenants come forward that owe rent right now, people that have never owed rent before. And I've had probably in the range of probably close to 100 homeowners that have come in and have never missed a mortgage payment that have now missed mortgage payments. It's definitely been a hard balancing act. I understand apply to landlords not getting their rent to provide essential services to their buildings. I also understand a number of tenants that have not been able to pay their rent. Hopefully we're developing programs. I introduced several bills in the Senate. One was able to sit working with Governor Murphy. The actual legislation itself wasn't enacted, but the idea of the legislation, Governor Murphy worked with me to get $100 million released. I have another bill in right now that's going to be close to $450 million. That's moving through the legislature. In fact, it's coming up for a committee vote on Thursday. So hopefully that's going to help. It not only helps the tenant, the money doesn't go to the tenant. Tenant qualifies for up to 6 months rent that goes directly to the landlord. So hopefully this program's going to help, but this is only a drop in the bucket. It's not going to take a couple $100 million. It's not going to take $550 million. It's going to take several $1 billion in rental payments and helping people with their mortgage payments to really get us back on track. The COVID-19 pandemic won't end in 2021 nor 2022. Hopefully the health end of it will lessen. But the residual after that of rent and mortgages and people not working is going to go well into 2023, 2024. And it's going to take both the federal government, Congress, obviously, the United States Senate, the president, and governors throughout the nation and state legislatures to really resolve this problem. I mean, working together is going to take a lot of money behind all this to really bring people back to where they should be. I mean, just providing proper PPE going forward is going to be important, making sure children are safe when they return to school, teachers are vaccinated, teachers have the resources they need, possibly new ventilation systems in schools. You're talking billions into the trillions of dollars to bring this nation back to where we were. It's going to take time. There's no doubt about it. Look, I'm a guy that likes things done yesterday. When somebody comes in with a problem, I like to try to resolve their problem. Not always able to, but I like to try to resolve their problem. I don't like postponing things for the future, but I've learned from COVID right now, some of these things are more long-term. So if we can first get the rent money in, get it to the landlords as it comes in, keep people in their apartments. We can have people evicted in the street, but the pandemic definitely will never end. This disease will keep growing and the virus will keep spreading. So keeping them in their apartments, keeping people in their homes with their mortgage payments is going to be critical, and it's going to be a test of leadership in this country from both the president, the Congress, and obviously to the governors all the way down to the local mayors.
Lastly, we talked about the possibility of a very progressive challenger perhaps going up against him in the upcoming primary, as Mayor Stack also is our state senator in the 33rd Legislative District, and he'll be seeking re-election later this year. But even before that, during the June primary, as we all know, local progressive groups have actually challenged many incumbent Democrats in recent years, whether it's been for freeholder positions or even last year for a seat in the House of Representatives. Without question, Mayor Stack understands these progressive groups are very loud and very defiant, and he doesn't take them very lightly. Let's hear what he had to say about the possibilities of a progressive challenger during the upcoming primary.
Mr. Mayor, it seems that especially in Hudson County lately, we've been witnessing a rise in really progressive organizations or groups or just maybe candidates that seem to be wanting to make a lot of noise on social media or just in general by trying to primary incumbent Democrats here in Hudson County. We saw it last year, right? We saw it with Representative Ceres, who had a really progressive challenger. We saw it with freeholder candidates as well, going up to the primary. There's nobody declared right now. I don't see why someone would want to run against you based on your excellent record in the 33rd Legislative District. But, it's politics. Someone's going to just want to make some noise and be a troublemaker. Are you at all concerned that one of these progressive groups is going to try to make the argument that State Senator Brian Stack has not been doing the job, which is a lie because we all know you have been doing a great job. But are you concerned at all that one of these progressive groups is just going to say, you know what, we got to go after Senator Stack? Is there a concern about that?
Yeah, in every election, Fernando, I really do. I really go into every election running hard. I never take it for granted. Even when I don't have a challenger, which is not often, but over the years there's been elections where I didn't have a challenger, which is it's a different feeling for me. But even in those elections, I went out, we knocked on doors, we presented our platform to the voters, and also just to go out there and seek support from people. In every election, I always assume that I'm going to have a challenger. I assume in this election I'll have a challenger also. And yeah, it's always on my mind. I believe that I'm a very practical elected official. I believe if somebody wants to challenge me on being progressive, I practice progressiveness every day by helping people and real life ways, helping them with their problems one-on-one, helping them through my staff as both a mayor and a state senator, and just as a human being, helping other people. I don't really see what their platform would be against me that I'm not progressive enough. I've been a person that believes in I'm not so much a person that believes in so much of the Democrat-Republican politics. I don't believe there's any Democrat or Republican way to help somebody when they have a problem. Obviously, we all have our disagreements from Republican and Democratic platforms, maybe on the state level or the federal level. But I try my best as a state senator to represent everyone. When I run in a primary, obviously it's restricted to Democrats, but when I run in November, I want to try to attract as many Republicans and independents to vote for me as Democrats. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm always concerned about a challenger. I'm always on the lookout for a challenger, and I try to keep myself, my office, my staff, and my record to be that I won't get a serious challenge. That I try to do the right thing all the time. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being, but I really do try to do the best I can.
It was a very illuminating episode with Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack. Certainly, you can listen to it in its entirety once again by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. You can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet, anywhere at any time. Without doubt, folks, these are the exclusives I'll continue to bring you in 2021 every week on Blog Talk Radio. Here's some local stories for your consideration. Let's go all the way south to Bayonne for a very important news development, and certainly a shout out to Terry West with the Jersey Journal for her report on this story. Now, UPS plans to open a new distribution center on the former military ocean terminal in Bayonne, a move that ultimately would create up to 1,000 new jobs, according to city officials. Now, if approved, the company would build a 880,000 square foot warehouse and additional parking on the man-made peninsula. UPS would use the facility as a package sorting center, but also offer some local pickups and deliveries from the warehouse, according to a company spokesman. Now, the site is about 150 acres in size, and a wharf may allow for easy transport to New York City, according to the city of Bayonne and Mayor Jimmy Davis's office. Now, the Bayonne Planning Board will review developer Liquid Equities Group's site plan in the upcoming meeting. According to city officials, quote, "This is a welcome addition to the revitalization of the former marine terminal there in Bayonne, and great news for Bayonne families. Even U.S. Senator Bob Menendez weighed in on it with his own statement, quote, "I applaud Mayor Jimmy Davis and his council for their continued leadership in attracting new, good-paying jobs and economic opportunities for the city." Now, Hudson County's only existing UPS warehouse is in Secaucus. According to UPS spokesman Matthew O'Connor, he said, quote, "We appreciate the community support as we provide reliable services for businesses of all sizes and bring resilient, good-paying jobs to the area." Now, officials announced plans for up to 1.6 million square feet of warehouse space to be developed, again, on the former marine terminal back in 2018, while Liquid Equities was in the process of buying the old land. At the time, old warehouses there dated back to World War II. Now, Liquid Equities has since expanded the property through an acquisition from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, according to city spokesman Joe Ryan. Now, the man-made peninsula that points towards Brooklyn is being gradually redeveloped into a residential and commercial hub that will eventually include a ferry service to New York City. Mayor Davis said, quote, "When I first became mayor in 2014, the development of the marine terminal and bringing jobs back to Bayonne was my top priority. The project with UPS helps me accomplish both and is not only good for Bayonne, but also for the entire region." Folks, I could not agree with Mayor Davis more, and also with the senior U.S. Senator. Without question, we live in a time where Amazon, and Amazon Prime specifically, has really just dominated the marketplace. And for a company that has such a long standing like UPS, seeing them set up shop in another area in Hudson County certainly is advantageous. Hey, if it brings 1,000 new jobs, that's great, especially during this pandemic when people are struggling to get work and hopefully, obviously not live in unemployment where many residents have had to do this. Folks, overall, listen, whenever we see expansions like this, it's always a good thing. And I understand that maybe some local activists will object to that area being used to create a new warehouse. But ladies and gentlemen, during this pandemic, if for nothing else, if it helps to boost the local economy, it gets people back to work and obviously helps ease a lot of the burden that's on the Secaucus warehouse. Because listen, have you ever been there to pick up a package or to ship a package? It could be a nightmare getting in and out of that warehouse. So you know what? If we have a new facility in Hudson County, that's a benefit for everyone. Let's move west in Hudson County to the city of Kearney, where for the very first time since 2003, Mayor Al Santos may actually end up having a primary challenger. Now, Kearney Mayor Al Santos will be facing some heat from real estate professional and Kearney native Sidney Ferreira, according to his campaign spokesperson. And he's seriously considering a run and is developing a platform focused on tightening finances and reforming the role of the mayor's office. It's nothing personal against Santos, Ferreira says. Quote, "Kearney simply needs some fresh ideas and change now that Santos has spent nearly 2 decades in office." Now, once again, great job by Terry West with the Jersey Journal for her report on this story. Here's some other details here to sort of unpackage what's going on. Now, according to the 42-year-old realtor, quote, "Competition is good and we need competition." Now, Ferreira currently owns a rental property company and is an agent with Rosa Agency. He spent his career in the financial industry and is also the treasurer of the Acora Social and Sports Club, a Portuguese cultural group based in Newark, although he's never run for office. He said he'd like to see lower property taxes in Kearney, more efficient spending, and new sources of revenue. The role of the mayor should also be a full-time position with term limits, according to Ferreira's campaign spokesperson. Quote, "We need someone that is always going to be here to focus on the issues." For now, Ferreira is putting together his candidate petition and chatting up city employees about what they'd like to see concerning change in the city of Kearney. He plans to run as a Democrat and face Santos in the primary election. Quote, "I'll hope to have a good discussion on the issues with Mayor Santos." Now, Al Santos was first elected in 1999, and he's ran 3 races entirely unopposed. As a matter of fact, his last challenge in the general election was in 2009. He's only ever had one other primary challenger, and that was James Mangan in 2003. Folks, let me just say this. Competition is always great, and Mr. Ferreira is correct on that. I've had the chance to interview Al Santos on my weekly podcast, Talking to Hudson, on multiple occasions. He's a good public servant. He's certainly very transparent and very accessible to Kearney residents. Remains to be seen, though, whether or not Mr. Ferreira will be able to get the support that he needs to challenge Al Santos in the upcoming primary. But you know what? It's a democracy. We always welcome competition, but let's see what happens in the city of Kearney, where, like in a lot of townships in Hudson County, change isn't always received very well. And certainly if residents are happy with the current administration, it's hard for someone to come in without any political experience and challenge him and ultimately unseat him in a primary election. I'll keep you posted on this issue and story in the weeks and months ahead, but without a doubt, Mayor Al Santos may have a challenger in the next few weeks and months, and certainly we'll keep you posted about whether or not Mr. Ferrero will go through on challenging him in the upcoming primary election. Lastly, I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Diego Maya, the editor-in-chief of the Latino Index. For you maybe not aware, the Latino Index is one of the biggest online news magazines in the state of New Jersey. In the 2021 edition of the Latino Index, which features the top 100 Latinos in the state of New Jersey, well, to no one's surprise, yours truly is on that list. I'm certainly very thankful to Mr. Maya and the panel of judges that selected me along with 99 other very prominent Latinos in the state of New Jersey for 2021. Whether it's attorneys, whether it is doctors, whether it is elected officials, or even journalists. Now more than ever, folks, it's so important to feature the contributions of Hispanics all throughout the state of New Jersey. I can't say enough how humbled I was to receive the news this week about being featured on the list. And as you all know, I'm not the most humble person around, so to even receive the news and to be humbled that way had to be something really grandiose. So once again, I do want to thank the Latino Spirit for their Latino Index of the top 100 Latinos in New Jersey for 2021. Again, I can't say enough, folks, about the important contributions of Hispanics, Latinos, and Latinas alike in the Garden State in regards to the professions, whether it's academia, journalism, the medical field, politics, medicine, you name it. Latinos and Latinas are making quite a prominent impact in the state of New Jersey. Without question, I'll definitely keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead about how prominent this list will become, and certainly the impact that Latinos and Latinas will continue to have, not just in New Jersey politics, but in every professional field that we can think of. I can't say enough, once again, thank you to Mr. Diego Maya and the panel of judges for selecting me this year to be on this very prestigious list. And without question, folks, I take this honor very seriously. Again, there aren't a lot of Latino academics and Latino journalists in the state of New Jersey. So I'm hoping to represent all of you with pride, and I'll be doing so not just in 2021, but also for the foreseeable future. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And remember, live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can check out the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. I'll bring the exclusives that nobody else is bringing you in Hudson County media, and certainly I'll continue doing that throughout 2021. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. It's your favorite professor and New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and also enjoy President's Day weekend. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you next time right here with the Hudson Media Group.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.